I only went back for my purse, but the manager pulled me close and whispered a sentence that turned my blood to ice. He marched me to the security monitor and told me to watch. On the blurry screen, the man I call my husband was not just cheating on our 9th anniversary. He was playing a character in a plan much dirtier than infidelity. I stood there and watched my marriage dissolve in grainy black and white. My name is Harper Caldwell. At 34 years old, I had spent the last 5 years mastering the art of logistical chaos as the shift coordinator for Northgate Wellness Institute. I was good at managing crises, rearranging lives, and smoothing over scheduling conflicts. That was why I had aggressively bartered with 3 different nurses to clear my schedule for tonight. It was supposed to be our 9th wedding anniversary. Then the vibration came through my purse. I looked down at the screen. Stuck in a client strategy session. It's going to run late. So sorry, babe. The emoji felt like a slap. It was a lazy, yellow, pixelated afterthought. I sat in my car in the driveway, staring at the message. The disappointment rose in my throat. Acidic and familiar. I pushed it down. I did what I had trained myself to do over nearly a decade of marriage. I rationalized it. Derek was ambitious. Derek was providing for our future. I was the understanding wife who did not nag. I put the car in reverse. I refused to go inside and eat a sad salad over the kitchen sink while staring at the empty chair across from me. I drove out to Ghoulhaven instead. The coastal fog was just starting to roll in, blurring the lights of the boardwalk. I pulled up to Tide and Timber. It was the kind of place where they shaved truffles onto your pasta without asking the price. I requested a table for one. The hostess gave me that pitying look reserved for solo diners on a Friday night. But I held my head high. The meal was a blur of excellent food that tasted like ash. I focused on the details to keep from crying. I watched a single bead of condensation slide down the side of my crystal water glass. I listened to the rhythmic, polite clinking of silver against porcelain from the surrounding tables. The amber lighting made everyone look beautiful and successful. It made me feel like a ghost haunting a banquet. I finished my wine and signaled for the check. When I reached down to the empty chair beside me, my hand met only cool leather, my clutch. I had left it on the marble counter in the ladies' room. I stood up, smoothing my dress, and walked toward the back corridor. It felt like such a trivial mistake. I was just going to grab my bag, pay the bill, and go home to sleep in an empty bed. Martin Klein intercepted me before I could reach the restroom door. I knew Martin. We had come here often enough that he usually greeted me with a warm smile and a recommendation from the wine cellar. Tonight, his face was the color of old parchment. He stepped directly into my path, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. "Mrs. Hale," he said. His voice was tight. "Hello, Martin. I just left my purse in the back. I'll be right out." He did not move. He reached out and took my elbow, his grip surprisingly firm. He was trembling. "I need you to come with me," Martin said. He pulled me toward a heavy service door marked Employees Only. I could lose my pension for this. I could lose everything. "Martin, what is going on?" I asked, trying to pull my arm back. "Is there a fire?" He opened the door and shoved me into the cramped security office. The room smelled of stale coffee and ozone. He locked the door behind us and pointed a shaking finger at the bank of monitors on the wall. "Don't go into the VIP room," Martin whispered. The fear in his eyes was contagious. It made my stomach turn over. "They are in VIP 4, but you need to see this first. Look, just look at the camera." I looked. My heart hammered against my ribs. I expected to see 2 people entangled. I expected to see a kiss. I expected the classic sordid betrayal of a husband who claimed to be working. I saw Derek. He was there on the grainy black and white feed, standing inside the private dining room, but he wasn't embracing anyone. The image on the screen was so sharp, so deliberate, that my brain refused to process it for a second. It wasn't the heat of passion. It was something cold. It was something calculated. Watch, Martin hissed. Just watch. Martin tapped a key on the console, rewinding the footage. The timestamp in the corner read 6:30 in the evening. That was 45 minutes before he had sent me the text about the client meeting. I watched the man I had shared a bed with for 9 years stand by the trunk of his sedan in the parking lot. He took off his familiar Navy work blazer, folded it neatly, and placed it in the trunk. Then, he pulled out a charcoal suit jacket I had never seen before. He slipped it on and smoothed the lapels, checking his reflection in the car window. It was not the behavior of a man rushing to a meeting. It was an actor getting into costume. He walked toward the entrance, but he did not go alone. A woman stepped out of a black SUV parked 2 spots over. Even in the grainy black and white feed, the platinum blonde hair was unmistakable. Brielle Ashford, I whispered. She was local royalty, the face of the Ashford Foundation, the devoted wife always pictured next to her ailing husband in the Sunday papers. On the screen. Derek did not try to kiss her. He did not touch her waist. He shook her hand. It was a firm, lingering grip, the kind that sealed a treaty rather than a romance. "Wait," Martin said. "Look at the corner." A third figure stepped into the frame. He was a sharp-edged man in a tailored suit, the legal advisor who shadowed the Ashford family like a grim reaper. Derek reached into his inside pocket and produced a thin manila envelope. He handed it to the lawyer, who tucked it away immediately without checking the contents. "Can we hear them?" I asked. Martin adjusted a dial on the control board. The audio was filled with static and the distant clatter of the kitchen, but then Derek's voice cut through the noise, distinct and terrifyingly calm, right on the gala schedule, signing capacity papers. The words hit me harder than any confession of adultery. Capacity papers. That was not the language of love. That was the language of law, of stripping someone of their rights. "Show me the room log," I said. My voice sounded distant, as if someone else were speaking. Martin pointed to a line on the clipboard open on his desk. His finger hovered over the entry for VIP 4. "They are in there," Martin said, his voice dropping so low I had to lean in to hear him. "There is a ring. I saw it when I brought the champagne." I looked back at the monitor. Martin switched the feed to the camera inside the private room. Derek was sitting across from Brielle. On the table between them sat a small, open velvet box. He was not kneeling. He was not smiling with the nervous joy of a lover. He looked like he was closing a business deal. My hand moved to my pocket. I pulled out my phone. I did not unlock it with Face ID. I punched in the code to ensure my grip was steady. I raised the lens to the security monitor. "Mrs. Hale, wait," Martin started. "Shh," I hissed. I framed the shot carefully. I needed 3 things. I needed Derek's face, clear and undeniable. I needed Brielle's profile to prove her identity. And I needed that ring box. I tapped the shutter button. My phone was on silent, so there was no artificial click to mark the moment my marriage officially ended. "I should go in there," I said. "I should throw this phone on the table." Martin grabbed my wrist. His eyes were wide with panic. "No," he said urgently. "If you confront them now, they will deny it. They will say you are hysterical. They will wipe the tapes and I will be fired before morning. You need to leave like you were never here." He was right. If they were discussing capacity papers and legal schedules, they were dangerous people. I was just an obstacle. I stepped out of the security office and into the cool night air of the back alley. The smell of the ocean mixed with the exhaust from the kitchen vents. A wave of nausea rolled over me, violent and sudden, but I forced it down. I stood by the dumpster and took 3 deep breaths. I waited for the tears, but they did not come. Instead, a cold numbness settled over my skin. It felt like armor. I turned back to the door where Martin stood watching me, looking terrified. "Martin," I said, "I need that video file." "I can't give you copies," he stammered. "The system logs every export." "Then don't export it as evidence," I said. Flag the timestamp. Export a clip labeled Slip and Fall Investigation for Insurance Purposes. Make it look like a boring security check. Just get me that file. I sat in the driver's seat of my sedan with the engine idling. My thumb hovered over the search bar on my phone screen where I had typed the name Grant Ashford. Everyone in Ghoulhaven knew the story. Grant was the tragic figure in the Ashford dynasty. The narrative was always the same. He was the brilliant but frail heir, and Brielle was the saintly wife who pushed his wheelchair and managed his foundation. If Brielle felt safe enough to accept an engagement ring in a crowded restaurant with lawyers present, it meant she did not fear her husband. It meant she believed Grant was already gone, or at least rendered so powerless that he no longer mattered. She had not just cheated on him. She had discarded him while he was still breathing. I needed a voice of reason before I did something reckless. I dialed Dr. Elaine Porter. She picked up on the third ring. Harper Elaine asked, her voice sharp and alert despite the late hour. Is everything all right? You are not usually a late-night caller. I saw him. Elaine, I said. My voice was shaking, so I gripped the steering wheel to steady myself. I saw Derek. He wasn't just with a woman. There were lawyers. They were talking about capacity papers and gala schedules. He gave her a ring. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear Elaine taking a breath. You are trying to find a logic that makes this less painful, Elaine said calmly. You are looking for a loophole to avoid believing the truth. It's not a loophole, I snapped, then immediately lowered my voice. Elaine, this isn't just an affair. If they are filing capacity papers, they are trying to take control of the Ashford estate. Derek isn't just a cheater. He is an accomplice to God, maybe fraud. Harper. Listen to me, Elaine said. Her tone shifted from therapist to strategist. If your husband is involved in a scheme to strip a man of his legal rights, you are not safe. You are the wife of a man who is willing to destroy lives for profit. Do not go home and pretend to sleep. Do not confront him. I won't, I said. You need to decide right now who you are in this story, Elaine continued. Are you the victim who waits to be told it's over, or are you the one who closes the book I ended the call? The question hung in the air of the car. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red, but the tears had stopped. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I set a new rule for myself in that moment. No screaming, no crying, no long emotional texts demanding explanations. Every ounce of energy I had spent worrying about Derek's happiness for 9 years would now be funneled into survival. I would not give him the satisfaction of my rage. I would give him my silence. I opened my messages and found Jessa Reed. I sent her a pin of my current location and the address I was about to drive to. If I am silent in 2 hours, find me. I put the car in gear and drove toward the cliffs. The Ashford estate was located in the most exclusive part of Ghoulhaven, where the driveways were long enough to have their own zip codes. I drove automatically, my mind cold and clear. I was not going there to tattle on a cheating spouse. I was going to verify the battlefield. If Grant Ashford was truly as sick and weak as the tabloids claimed, I would find a way to give him the evidence without killing him from the shock. But if he was being drugged or manipulated or lied to, he deserved to know that the axe was falling. I would not be an accomplice. Derek had made his choice to be a villain. I was driving into the dark to see if I could be a savior, or if I was just another casualty waiting to happen. The gates of the Ashford estate loomed ahead, tall and iron and forbidding. I killed my headlights and coasted to a stop. I was done being the wife who waited for dinner. Tonight, I was the one serving the cold dish. The patio door glided open with a silent, well-oiled slide. I stepped inside the Ashford residence, expecting the warmth of a family home, but the air hit me like a hospital waiting room. It smelled of antiseptic cleaner and lemon furniture polish. The living room was vast and filled with expensive mahogany furniture that looked like it had never been touched. There were no throw blankets, no magazines on the coffee table, and no signs of life. It was a museum, not a sanctuary. Grant Ashford sat in his wheelchair facing the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the cliffs. His back was to me, a silhouette of fragility against the moonlight. I approached him slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had expected to find a man withering away, slumped and defeated. But as I got closer, I saw his reflection in the darkened glass. His spine was straight. His eyes were open and alert, watching me approach in the reflection with the intensity of a hawk. I did not waste time with pleasantries. I walked around the chair and placed my phone face up on the glass coffee table in front of him. The screen glowed with the image I had taken less than an hour ago, the open ring box, Brielle's profile, and Derek's face. "Derek is proposing to your wife," I said. My voice was steady, stripping away any apology or softness. "They are at Tide and Timber right now." I waited for the devastation. I waited for the denial or the tears of a dying man realizing he had been betrayed. Grant looked at the photo. He studied it for exactly 5 seconds. He did not blink. He did not gasp. "I know," Grant said. The calm in his voice made my blood run cold. I took a step back, confusion washing over me. I thought I was the messenger of doom, but he looked like a man confirming a weather report. You knew," I stammered, then why Grant gripped the armrests of his wheelchair. With a smooth, powerful motion that defied every tabloid story I had ever read about his failing health, he pushed himself up. He stood to his full height, tall and imposing, without a single tremor in his legs. The wheelchair was a prop. The illness was a costume. "Sit down. Mrs. Hale," Grant said, gesturing to the sofa. He walked over to a sideboard, actually walked, with a steady, confident stride, and poured a glass of water. "We have a lot of work to do." I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. "You can walk. You aren't sick." "I am sick of being hunted," Grant replied. He turned back to me, his face hard and devoid of the pity I had expected. "Brielle isn't just having an affair with your husband. She is preparing a coup. At the gala next weekend, she intends to announce that I have lost my mental faculties. She is filing for emergency conservatorship to take control of Ashford Logistics and Ferries." He tossed a heavy file folder onto the table next to my phone. It slid across the glass and stopped inches from my hand. "Open it," he commanded. I opened the folder. It was an autopsy of a marriage and a business. There were bank statements highlighting transfers to offshore accounts. There were emails between Brielle and a team of doctors I had never heard of. There was a draft of a press release titled "Statement Regarding the Health and Leadership Transition of Grant Ashford." "She needs to prove I am incompetent," Grant explained, his voice low and dangerous. "She needs a paper trail to show the board of directors that I am unfit to sign checks or make decisions. That is where your husband comes in." "Derek," I whispered. "Derek is not just a lover," Grant said. "He is the architect. He is handling the paperwork to legalize the transfer of assets. He is the one making sure the theft looks like a mercy mission." I looked down at the papers, seeing Derek's signature as a witness on a document dated 3 days ago. Nausea rose in my throat again, but this time it was mixed with a burning rage. "I have the financial trail," Grant said, pointing to the folder. "I have the emails. But what I was missing was the intent to discard me publicly. I needed proof that this wasn't just business, but a conspiracy to replace me." He pointed a long finger at my phone, where the image of the engagement ring still glowed. "That ring is the final nail in her coffin," Grant said. "It proves they aren't just stealing my company. They are planning a future on my grave while I am still breathing. You didn't just bring me bad news, Harper. You brought me the weapon I needed to kill them. We have exactly 7 days until the gala," Grant said, leaning against the heavy oak desk. He looked less like a victim and more like a general mapping out a war zone. "You need to go home, Harper. You need to walk through that door, kiss your husband, and ask him how his meeting went. You cannot flinch. You cannot cry. You have to be the wife he thinks is too stupid to notice he is gone. The thought of touching Derek made my skin crawl. I looked at my hands, imagining the residual warmth of his palm on mine, now tainted by the image of him shaking hands with Brielle. I don't know if I can do that, I said. I don't know if I can look at him and not scream. Grant opened a drawer and slid a cheap, prepaid smartphone across the polished wood. It was black, nondescript, the kind you bought at a convenience store with cash. You have to, Grant said firmly. If you confront him tonight, they will spin the narrative. They will say you are a jealous, hysterical woman. They will destroy the documents. They will hide the money. Take this phone. It is our only line of communication. No names, no personal details. Messages delete automatically after 1 minute. Do not use your own data plan for anything related to this. I picked up the phone. It felt light, like a toy. But I knew it was a grenade. The gala next Saturday is Brielle's coronation. Grant continued. She intends to stand on stage in front of the press, the donors, and the board, and present those fake medical evaluations. She will ask for emergency powers to run the company. We are going to let her do it. You want her to humiliate you, I asked. I want her to commit a crime on camera, Grant corrected. If we stop her now, it is a private dispute. If we let her read those fraudulent papers to the world, it is a federal offense. We need her to feel safe. We need her to think she has won right up until the moment she opens her mouth. I understood then. This was not just about revenge. It was a heist. We were stealing back the truth. What do? I asked. Be the spy in his bed, Grant said. I need you to document everything, every lie he tells you about his schedule, every time his phone buzzes. I need you to find out if he brings any physical files home. And most importantly, I need you to listen for any slips about the gala. If he gets nervous, if he mentions a change in plans, I need to know immediately. I can do that, I said, the resolve hardening in my chest. I will watch him like a hawk. Grant walked over to the window, looking out at the dark driveway where Brielle would eventually return. My legal team is already drafting an emergency injunction to freeze the corporate accounts the second the gala starts, he said. We are installing digital tripwires in the system. If they try to move a single cent, we will know. And Harper, there is one more thing you should know about your husband. I braced myself. What Derek isn't just doing this for love, Grant said, turning to face me. We found a third bank account under a shell company name. It is not for household expenses. It is set up to receive a substantial transfer, a commission fee. He is being paid to help her steal my company, $200,000 upon completion of the transfer. The air left my lungs. He was selling our marriage for $200,000. It was a transaction. I felt a cold, dangerous smile tug at the corner of my mouth. It was liberating, in a twisted way. I stopped wondering what I had done wrong. You cannot reason with a mercenary. You can only outbid him or destroy the currency. I'll go home, I said, standing up. I'll cook him dinner, and I will make sure he feels very, very safe. I walked out of the Ashford mansion and back to my car. I did not feel like a woman whose heart was broken anymore. As I turned the ignition key, I felt like a director walking onto a set. The script was written. Now I just had to make sure the actors hit their marks before I burned the theater down. The kitchen smelled of garlic and rich, melted butter. It used to be the scent of comfort, the olfactory signal that the work week was over and our weekend had begun. Now it smelled like a stage set. I was not cooking dinner for my husband. I was building a prop for a scene titled The Oblivious Wife. I basted the chicken with a steady hand, checking the clock on the microwave. It was exactly 7:30. I had beaten him home by 20 minutes, just enough time to wash the smell of the Ashford mansion out of my hair and put on his favorite oversized sweater. The front door clicked open. I heard the heavy thud of his briefcase hitting the floorboards, followed by a long, theatrical sigh. "Babe," Derek called out, "I am so So sorry. He walked into the kitchen, looking perfectly disheveled. His tie was loosened, and his sleeves were rolled up. He came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist, burying his face in the crook of my neck. My instinct was to recoil. My body wanted to shove him away and scrub the spot where his skin touched mine. Instead, I forced my muscles to go limp. I employed a breathing technique I had learned in yoga but never thought I would use for survival. In for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Exhale for 4 counts. I thought the strategy session would never end. He mumbled against my skin. The client was impossible. It's okay, I said, turning in his arms to face him. I plastered a soft, tired smile on my face. I just started eating without you. I figured you were starving. He kissed my forehead. You are the best. Seriously, I don't deserve you. He was right, but not in the way he thought. As he pulled away to wash his hands, I caught the scent rising from his collar. It was not the stale coffee and dry erase marker smell of a conference room. It was the sharp, distinctive scent of sandalwood and sea salt, the exact body wash stocked in the showers at the Tide and Timber private suites. I glanced at his wrist as he reached for the paper towels. There, just below the cuff of his shirt, was a thin, angry red scratch. It looked like a fingernail mark. We sat at the table. The silence was thick, filled only by the scrape of silverware. I waited until he had taken his first few bites, letting his guard drop with the comfort of food. Oh, I almost forgot, I said casually, stabbing a piece of broccoli. Next weekend is the Ashford Gala. Right, I need to know if I should pick up my dress from the cleaners. Derek's fork paused halfway to his mouth. It was a micro-reaction, a hesitation that lasted maybe half a second. But to my heightened senses, it looked like a billboard. He set the fork down slowly. Yeah, he said. It is next Saturday. It's going to be a heavy night, though. I think Brielle is going to make some kind of announcement about Grant's health. That is so sad, I said, watching his eyes. She must be devastated. Derek shook his head. And for a moment, the mask slipped. He didn't look sad. He looked impressed. Brielle is... Well, she is strong, he said, his voice dropping an octave. She does what needs to be done. It's tough. But honestly, I admire her resilience. Poor woman has been carrying that family for years. He wasn't talking about a grieving wife. He was talking about a partner in crime. Later that night, while Derek showered, I sat on the closed toilet lid and pulled a small, leather-bound notebook from the bottom of a box of tampons under the sink, the one place I knew he would never look. I uncapped a pen. Date, Friday the 14th. Time 8:15. Lie client meeting. Evidence, sandalwood soap. Scratch on left wrist. Reaction to gala hesitation. Admiration for her power, not her loss. Each entry felt like I was laying a brick in a wall that would eventually fall on him. I climbed into bed around 11 o'clock. I turned my back to him and regulated my breathing, mimicking the deep, rhythmic pattern of sleep. 10 minutes later, the mattress shifted. Derek reached for his phone on the nightstand. I kept my eyes closed, but I could feel the blue light washing over the room. His breathing changed. It became shallow and quick, the adrenaline of a secret conversation. He was texting her right beside me. The next morning, while he was on a run, I went into our home office. I did not just look for evidence of the affair. I looked for my exit strategy. I took the deed to the house, our marriage license, our passports, and the car titles. I scanned every single page to an encrypted cloud drive. Then, I put the physical copies into a waterproof envelope and placed them in a box filled with old college textbooks. I taped it shut and labeled it donations. I dropped it off at the post office on my way to the grocery store, addressing it to Jessa Reed. It was my survival insurance. When I got back to the car, my phone buzzed in my cup holder. I looked down and saw a message from Brielle Ashford. Hey, sweetie, just wanted to make sure you are ready for next Saturday. The theme is midnight glamour. Dress to kill. Can't wait to see you there. I stared at the winking face emoji. She was inviting me to the front row of my own funeral. I typed back a reply with shaking fingers. Wouldn't miss it for the world. On Monday morning, I sat at the kitchen island with a cup of cold coffee and the joint bank statement open on my laptop. I found a withdrawal labeled simply as emergency car repair. It was for $4,000. I knew our sedan had not been to a mechanic in 6 months, but $4,000 was not enough to buy the diamond I had seen on Brielle's finger. That meant Derek was not just spending our savings. He was pulling from a source I could not see. I needed to find the leak. I did not need a lockpick. I just needed the password manager Derek foolishly allowed the browser to save. I went into his email history and bypassed the inbox, going straight to the trash folder. He was careful, but he was arrogant. He assumed I would never look there. I found a deleted confirmation email from a local bank for a safety deposit box rental. The account holder was not Derek Hale. It was a shell company called Hale Advisory. I did not try to break into the bank. I did not need to see the cash to prove it existed. I took a screenshot of the service fee confirmation, the date of opening, and the digital signature he had used. It was indirect evidence, but in a forensic accounting audit, it would light up like a flare. The burner phone in my pocket buzzed against my hip. I took it to the bathroom to check the message. It was from Grant. Legal team found the draft for the emergency authorization. Your husband is listed as the witnessing party. He is not just watching. He is validating the removal of my rights. I flushed the toilet to cover the sound of my ragged breathing. Derek was signing his name to a document that would strip a man of his life. That evening, we sat in the living room watching the local news. A segment came on about a contract dispute involving a city developer. I seized the moment. I turned to Derek, feigning innocence. It is so scary how people can just sign things away, I said, keeping my eyes on the television. Don't witnesses on those legal papers have to be neutral parties? Like, they can't be friends with the people involved, right? Derek stiffened. He did not look at me. He picked up the remote and muted the television. Why would you ask that he asked? His voice was tight. Just curious. I shrugged. It seems like a conflict of interest. Harper, you do not understand corporate law, he snapped, his tone dripping with condescension. It is complicated. It is not about friendship. It is about capacity. Just stick to your schedules. Okay. He turned the volume back up, dismissing me. I looked at the back of his head. He did not just think I was annoying. He thought I was stupid. He believed I was incapable of understanding the complexity of his brilliance. That arrogance was going to be his downfall. Later that night, I walked past his home office. The door was cracked open an inch. I heard his voice, low and urgent. I stopped, pressing my back against the hallway wall. I know the timeline, Derek said into the phone. There was a pause. No, do not lower the dosage yet. Remember to keep Grant on the treatment schedule for the gala night. We need him docile on that stage. If he is lucid, the papers won't hold up. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. Treatment schedule. They were not just lying about Grant's health. They were actively drugging him to ensure he looked incompetent in front of the cameras. This was not just fraud anymore. It was physical abuse. I retreated to the bedroom and texted Grant immediately. He just confirmed they are keeping you on a treatment schedule for the gala to make you look docile. They are drugging you. Grant's reply came 2 minutes later. Good. They just confirmed the conspiracy to control my person. Let them think it is working. My laptop pinged with a notification from my private, encrypted email. It was a message from Martin, the manager at Tide and Timber. The subject line was blank. I opened the attachment. It was a high-definition video clip from the security feed. It showed Derek clearly handing the thick manila envelope to the Ashford family lawyer. I could see Derek's face, the lawyer's nod, and the exchange of the package. I saved the file to 3 different hard drives. I had the money trail. I had the intent. And now, I had the handover. I closed my laptop and looked at the closed bedroom door. I was sleeping next to a monster, but for the first time in a week, I did not feel afraid. I felt ready. Sloane Wexler was not the kind of lawyer who offered you a tissue. She was the kind who offered you a ballpoint pen and pointed exactly where you needed to sign to destroy someone's life. Her office was all glass and steel, located on the top floor of a building that looked down on the city like a predator. "We are not filing these today," Sloane said, her voice crisp and devoid of sympathy. She slid the divorce petition across the desk toward me. "If we file now, Derek gets alerted. He will liquidate assets and hide the money before you can blink. We keep this in my safe. The moment the police step into that ballroom tomorrow night, my paralegal files this electronically. We lock his accounts while he is being read his rights." I picked up the pen. My hand did not shake. I signed my name on the line next to petitioner. It felt like signing a death warrant for the woman I used to be, the naive wife who thought love was enough. "We have also placed a tripwire on your joint assets," Sloane added, pulling the papers back. "If he tries to move more than $500, I get an alert on my watch. If he tries to run, we freeze him out." Grant, who was sitting in the corner in his wheelchair, cleared his throat. He looked tired but focused. "There is a complication." Grant said, "Brielle is getting nervous. She suspects there might be a leak, though she doesn't know it is you. She has been planting stories in the social circle. She is telling people you are fragile. She is telling the board members that you have been having episodes." I felt the blood rush to my face. It was a classic move. If I stood up to accuse them, they would point to my instability and dismiss me as a jealous, broken woman. "She wants to discredit the witness," I said. "Exactly," Grant nodded. "If you speak up, it will look like a breakdown." I did not panic. I opened my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I slid it across the desk to Grant. "I thought she might try that." I said, "I went to see an independent psychiatrist 3 days ago. I paid in cash under my maiden name. That is a signed affidavit confirming I am of sound mind, fully oriented, and suffering from no delusions or manic episodes. If she calls me crazy, I will show the world I am the sanest person in the room." Sloane actually smiled. It was a terrifying, sharp thing. Excellent. We spent the next hour finalizing the choreography for the gala. Grant had arranged the presentation so there would be no escape. We were not just going to interrupt Brielle. We were going to trap her. We would let her speak, let her dig her own grave with her lies, and then we would project the truth onto a 20-foot screen behind her. "She won't have time to spin it," Grant said. "The audience will see the evidence before she realizes the microphone is dead." I went home to play my part for one last night. I put on the midnight blue gown I had bought for the event. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in our bedroom, smoothing the silk over my hips. Derek walked in, adjusting his cufflinks. He stopped and whistled low. "You look incredible," he said. He walked over and stood behind me, placing his hands on my shoulders. I watched us in the mirror. We looked like the perfect power couple. It was a lie so beautiful it made my stomach turn. "Smile," he said, pulling out his phone. "Let's capture the moment." I smiled. I leaned my head back against his chest and let him take the photo. I knew he would send it to Brielle later as proof that he had me under control. "I have something for you," Derek said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, flat box wrapped in silver paper. "I know I have been distant lately. Work has been crazy. But I wanted you to know I appreciate you sticking by me." I opened the box. Inside lay a pair of diamond stud earrings. They were tasteful, expensive, and completely impersonal. They were gilt rocks. "Thank you, Derek," I said softly. "They are beautiful. I just want us to be happy," he said, kissing the top of my head. "After tomorrow, things are going to be different. I promise." I went to the bathroom and wrote his words down in my notebook. "After tomorrow, things are going to be different." He had no idea how right he was. My phone buzzed on the marble counter. It was a text from Brielle. "Tomorrow night is the night that changes everything. Sleep tight." I read the message twice. I did not reply. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, at the diamond earrings catching the harsh bathroom light, and I thought, correct. The Grand Meridian Hotel had transformed its ballroom into a cavern of silk and crystals for the midnight glamour gala. I stood near the center of the room wearing a floor-length gown of dark blue satin that felt less like a dress and more like a suit of armor. Beside me, Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot. He checked his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. He did not look like a husband enjoying a night out. He looked like a man waiting for his lottery number to be called. "Relax," I said, keeping my voice light. "You are making me nervous." "It is a big night," Derek replied, flashing a tight smile. "Big change is coming." The lights dimmed. A spotlight cut through the darkness and landed on the double doors at the far end of the hall. The orchestra swelled. Brielle Ashford entered. She looked radiant in silver, shimmering like a knife blade under the lights. But she was not walking alone. She was pushing a wheelchair. Grant sat in the chair, his head bowed slightly. A wave of applause rippled through the room, but it was not the sound of admiration. It was the heavy, polite sound of pity. The crowd was mourning him while he was still sitting right in front of them. It made my stomach turn. Brielle navigated the wheelchair up the ramp to the stage. She parked Grant just out of the main spotlight, leaving him in the shadows while she stepped up to the microphone. A massive projection screen descended behind her. "Thank you all for coming," Brielle said. Her voice broke perfectly on the last word. She was a master performer. "As many of you know, my husband has been fighting a private battle. We hoped for recovery, but the doctors have confirmed that Grant is suffering from rapid cognitive decline." A collective gasp went through the room. Behind her, the screen flashed with images of medical documents. They were dense, official-looking, and completely fabricated. "Therefore," Brielle continued, her voice gaining strength, "to protect the legacy of Ashford Logistics, I am formally petitioning the board tonight for temporary operational control." The room erupted in applause again. I looked at Derek. He was clapping harder than anyone else. His eyes were wide and fixed on the stage. There was no sympathy in his face. It was pure, unadulterated hunger. He was watching his investment pay off. "I want to thank our support team," Brielle said, gesturing vaguely toward the audience. "Especially Derek Hale, whose trusted legal counsel has guided us through this painful transition." I felt a bubble of hysterical laughter rise in my throat. She was publicly thanking her lover for helping her steal her husband's life. It was so bold it was almost impressive. I tore my eyes away from the stage and scanned the perimeter of the room. Standing in the shadows near the kitchen service entrance was Martin. He wore a tuxedo, blending in with the staff, but he was watching me. He caught my eye and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. The signal. The security team was in position. The cameras were recording a separate feed. The lawyers were standing by behind the curtain. Brielle finished her speech. She turned to Grant, her smile tight and triumphant. She reached for the handles of his wheelchair, intending to push him off the stage like a used prop. "And now, we will retire for the evening," she said into the mic. She pushed. The chair did not move. Grant had gripped the wheels with both hands. He locked his elbows. Brielle pushed harder, confused, putting her weight into it. Screech. The sound of rubber tires locking against the polished stage floor tore through the polite silence of the room. It was sharp and violent. The applause died instantly. A murmur of confusion started to ripple through the crowd. Brielle froze. She looked down at Grant, her smile faltering for the first time. Beside me, Derek went rigid. The hunger vanished from his face, replaced by a sudden animalistic instinct. He leaned in close to my ear. "I don't like this," he whispered. It was the first honest thing he had said to me in weeks. He could smell the smoke, but he did not know he was already burning. Grant released his grip on the wheelchair rims. He placed his feet flat on the stage floor. Then, with the agonizing slowness of a nightmare coming to life, he stood up. The silence that fell over the ballroom was instant and terrifying. It felt as if someone had opened an airlock and sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Brielle stood frozen with her hands still hovering in the air, her face drained of all color. She looked at his legs, then at his face, unable to process the resurrection she was witnessing. Grant pulled a small remote from his jacket pocket. He did not say a word. He simply pointed it at the massive screen behind him. The fake medical charts vanished. In their place, the grainy black and white footage from Tide and Timber flickered to life. The entire room watched Derek Hale hand the thick envelope to the lawyer. They watched the handshake. They watched the smug, conspiratorial intimacy between my husband and the woman claiming to be a victim. Then came the sound. It played over the high-fidelity gala speakers, crisp and damning. Write it so he looks confused. I just need the signature and the seal. We don't need a real doctor if the board panics fast enough. The voice was unmistakably Brielle's. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Brielle snapped out of her trance. She lunged for the microphone, her elegance shattering into desperation. "It's a deep fake," she screamed, her voice cracking. "Turn it off. That is AI." "This is a setup." Grant did not fight her for the microphone. He stepped back, letting her scream. He knew that in a room full of sharks, the one bleeding the loudest was already dead. The chairman of the board stood up from the front table. He signaled to the security team lining the walls. "Cut the feed," the chairman ordered, pointing at Brielle, not the screen, "and secure the exits." The doors swung open, but not for guests to leave. 4 uniformed officers marched in, followed by 2 detectives. They walked straight up the center aisle. They did not stop until they reached the stage. Brielle was still shouting about fabrication when the first officer spun her around. The click of handcuffs echoed through the stunned room. They read her rights on the same red carpet where she had planned to steal a company. I turned to my left. Derek was already moving. He was backing away slowly, his eyes darting toward the service entrance, trying to blend into the chaos. He was trying to vanish. I stepped into his path. I slammed a heavy manila folder onto the high-top table beside us. The sound made him jump. "Harper!" He stammered, his face pale and sweating. "Harper, listen, I didn't know she was going to save it," I said. I opened the folder. On top lay the divorce petition, signed and dated. Underneath it were the bank records I had pulled, highlighting the transfers from the shell company and the purchase of the engagement ring. "Officer," I called out. A detective turned toward us. I pointed at Derek. "This is the witness signature on the fraudulent power of attorney," I said, my voice steady and cold. "And here are the bank statements showing he accepted a $200,000 commission to facilitate the fraud." Derek looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. He reached out, as if to grab my hand, but I stepped back. "Babe, please," he whispered. "I did it for us. You didn't betray me in a single night." "Derek," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "you built this betrayal like a project. You managed it like a job site. And now you are fired." The detective stepped in, grabbing Derek's arm and pulling him away from me. Derek looked back over his shoulder, searching for the wife who used to forgive him for missing dinner. She was not there. I turned and walked toward the exit. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped out of the hotel. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a message from Sloan, papers filed, accounts frozen. "It is done." I walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the wheel. A single tear rolled down my cheek. It was not for Derek. It was not for the 9 years I had lost. It was a tear of pure, unadulterated relief. I started the engine and drove away, leaving the wreckage in my rearview mirror, finally owning the title to my own life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment down below where you are listening from right now. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Victoria Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share this journey with even more people.